In this video, I'm going to take you through all the requirements of the 6th grade technical work for violin AMEB. There's a few points to think about when you're preparing your program. First thing is all scales and arpeggios must be played from memory. No exception for that. Play only the fingers that are printed, okay, or the fingers in the brackets. So don't make up your own fingering. Use 4th finger when you're ascending in a scale, and then using open string, obviously down in 1st position when you're descending the scale. Another recommendation of mine is to do a little crescendo as you're going up the scale. So as you're getting higher up into the notes and higher up onto the string, your violin should be playing a little bit louder with your bow closer to the string, and then as you're descending, naturally you should be getting a little bit softer. When you're practicing your scales, start with a slow tempo. So never try to start the scale, never try to learn a scale faster than what you're capable of doing. So good idea is to start at 66 and just play 1 note to a beat, and then go 2 notes to a beat, and then 3 notes to a beat, 4 notes to a beat. After 2 notes to a beat, you might have to just gradually speed up the tempo, going from 66, 70, 75 and 80 before you can get to 3 notes into the beat. If you can't get your scales faster, and you've practiced and practiced but you still just can't get them fast enough, then you need to do patterns. Galamian was the famous violin teacher who introduced patterns to getting the fingers fast and synchronized with the right hand bow hand. I'll give you a demonstration of patterns. So a first one would be to play long, short, long, short. Then you do the opposite. And then you can do other patterns such as short, short, long. And long, short, short. So there's lots of different patterns that you can do. You can even make up your own patterns, but it's very important that you take the tempo down, and then you get really confident and capable of playing those patterns and then switching them over. So if you're doing long, short, then you need to switch that over and do short, long, and then go back to your scale playing the normal bowing, and then you'll find that 9 times out of 10 that your fingers are nice and flexible and loose, and you can just play up and down those scales so much faster than you could have ever done without playing with the patterns. There are 3 different bowing requirements for the 3 octave scales in 6th grade violin. The first one is détaché. That's fairly straightforward. The other bowing is slurred, 4 notes to a bow. Now your slurs, they need to be legato, so that's what slurs mean. They have to be legato with an even bow speed and smooth string crossing and shifting. So you need to practice those shifts if they're not smooth. Just slow them down. Slow motion practice is very important, and making sure that your fingers are shifting smoothly and that we don't hear too much drag in the shift, particularly in the slurs when you're playing slurs. The spiccato should be nice and even sounding, especially when you're crossing the strings. So be careful with your bow arm when you're crossing the strings. No sudden movements. You have to really think ahead with your bow when you're playing particularly spiccato. And also slightly accent the first of each group of 3 of those notes. That way you're giving yourself a little bit of momentum through throughout the scale, and that it's going to sound a lot more even when you've got a pulse going throughout your playing. So let's get started. The first scale is C major. I'm going to play each scale with the 3 different bowings, and I'm going to play them at tempo. So tempo is 66 for the détaché, the legato slurs, and then it's 112 for the spiccato. I'll play each scale with each of those 3 bowings, and let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4. legato slurs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now spiccato bowing at 112, 3 to a note and three notes to a beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next scale is C harmonic minor, détaché at 66. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now legato slurs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now C melodic minor with spiccato bowing at 112. 1, 2, 3, 4. C harmonic minor with détaché bowing. 1, 2, 3, 4. C harmonic minor with legato bowing. 1, 2, 3, 4. C harmonic minor with spiccato bowing at tempo 112. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next scale is D major with détaché bowing. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now with legato slurs. 1, 2, 3, 4. D major with spiccato bowing at tempo 112. 1, 2, 3, 4. D melodic minor with détaché bowing at 66. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now D melodic minor again, this time with legato bowing. 1, 2, 3, 4. D melodic minor with spiccato bowing, tempo 112. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4. D harmonic minor with legato bowing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we get to the 2-octave scales. These scales are at tempo 126. The first bowing is legato 2 to a bow with 2 détaché, and the other bowing is legato slurs 8 to a bow. F major with the 2 slurred and 2 separate bow stroke. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now with the legato slurs, 8 to a bow. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now F melodic minor with the slurred and separate bowing. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now with legato 8 to a bow, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I'm going to go on to F harmonic minor, the first bowing, the legato 2 with the 2 separate, and then on to legato 8 to a bow. Tempo 126. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now with legato slurs, 8 to a bow, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it's time to go on to the arpeggios. 3-octave arpeggios. The first one is the one commencing on C. There are 2 bowings for this. The first one is détaché and the second one is legato slurs, 3 to a bow. I'm going to play each arpeggio the first time with détaché and then I'll go straight into the legato slurs. 1, 2, 3, 4. D major arpeggio, first time with détaché and the second time with legato slurs. 1, 2, 3, 4. major arpeggio with détaché bowing at tempo 126. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now with the slurs 6 to a bow at tempo 66. 1, 2, 3, 4. Diminished 7th and dominant 7th arpeggio and chromatic sequences at tempo 120. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now starting on D. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next thing is one string scales. For these ones, your fingers and arm need to reach around so that you can get high up on the string and your fingers on top of the strings. And as your fingers are getting closer up, your bow also needs to come in a little bit closer to the bridge. So let's begin. The first one is C major with tempo 56. And make sure that your triplets are nice and slow, subdividing the beat at the end for the arpeggio part. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next one is C melodic minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now C harmonic minor, 3, 4. Now D major, starting on open D string, 3, 4. Now D melodic minor, 3, 4. D harmonic minor, 3, 4. Alright, so now we get to double stops. Double stops are very difficult to play. However, if you give yourself enough time, maybe even at least 6 to 12 months to practice these, then they should be sounding good. You need to practice double stops every day for them to be really good. Unfortunately, I haven't been practicing every day, so they're not going to sound as good as hopefully yours will. But then again, I'm not doing the exam. So let's begin. Couple of things to remember with double stops. They need to be warm, so nice, warm, velvety kind of tone. Your fingers need to be light on the strings. Don't strangle the strings. It's not going to help you, okay, if your fingers are really tense. So light fingers and light bow pressure as well. So I always like to stress the importance of the bow level comes from your arm. Okay, so don't press down harder. That's not going to help your tone. You may be able to get 2 strings, but it's going to sound awful, so don't do that. Also, practice, really good practice tip, practice your double stops 1 line at a time. So what I mean by that is putting both fingers down, but just put your bow on 1 string so that your ear is focusing on the intonation of 1 line. So you start that with the bottom line and then you can switch to the top line. I'll just give you a short demonstration with C major. So put both your fingers down, pretend like your fingers are playing the double stops, but just put your violin bow on 1 string. So. And then swap it. Swap your bow over to the starting on the upper note. Because sometimes it's really hard to determine which finger is out of tune. So if you practice them separately, but with both fingers down, because your fingers are it's very difficult to make them work independently. You might be able to play C major in tune, but when you're playing them like this with your other fingers, it becomes very difficult. So practice each line separately, but with both fingers down. So let's begin with C major. The tempo is 66, and luckily it's at chain bowing, so that's a little bit easier than just straight double stops as well. So 66, let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to C major in octaves. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another good tip I just thought of was, when it's particularly with octaves, play the lower line a little bit louder. So that way it gives, makes it sound a little bit better when you've got the lower line, and just takes a focus off any intonation issues, if there are any. The next one is D major in sixths. 1, 2, 3, 4. D major in octaves. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're up to the technical exercises. The good thing about this is that you can use the music to play these exercises. And you must use the fingers that are printed in the music. The first exercise 6A is focusing on shifting. I've got a couple of notes for you here. So the first thing is the shifting and positions, it involves muscle memory. So you need to practice this kind of shifting regularly so that your muscles and your fingers, your wrist, elbow and arm, they know where to go. So if you don't practice this regularly, say at least every single day for about a month, which is about the usual length of time to form a habit, then your muscles aren't going to be very reliable in getting your fingers in tune. The next thing is the fingers need to be light on the string. So when you're shifting, they're just lifting up lightly. They're still on the string, but they're not pressing the string down to the fingerboard. And your elbow needs to be actively changing positions with your hand, so that when your hand is up, you're shifting. When your hand is up, your arm gets your fingers around so that your fingers can get on top of the strings up to 5th position. So let's begin. The tempo is 112. Read through the information that there is there. And also the other thing is you can play with a romantic style, which means that you can hear the shift. You don't need to hide that shift so much. So you can play it with a little bit of shift, not too heavy. Make sure the fingers are light, but it can be in that romantic style. Tempo 112. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exercise 6B. This exercise is for playing in 5th position. So your fingers and your hand position must be very secure so that it doesn't go out of tune. Play vibrato on the dotted crotchets, and even if it's very difficult, just get a little bit in just to demonstrate that you can play vibrato at least a little bit in the upper positions. Be aware of the semitones and mark them in if you need to, but make sure you rub them out before the exam. And make this piece musical. Okay, so be aware of the dynamic level, mezzo forte, and also slow it down a little bit at the end. So you need to practice this one without the metronome, so that in the exam it feels more natural and more musical. So the tempo is 76. 1, 2, 3. Exercise 6C. In bars 1 to 4, your bow arm should be smooth when crossing the strings. So don't think of it as individual string levels, just think of it as one continuous smooth crossing. In bars 5 to 8, you need to use your upper arm to cross to the lower strings, and then use your forearm to cross between A and E string very quickly. In bars 9 to 12, use a heavy spiccato and change bow level with your upper arm. And in bars 13, where you've got these double stops, you need to aim for the middle string. So, and not too hard. It's got to be quite a gentle, drawn out kind of motion. Okay, so let's begin. Tempo 76. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exercise 6D, Sortier. I've got a couple of notes on this. I'm going to read from the notes. This is a bow stroke where the wood of the bow bounces, but the hair doesn't leave the string. So it involves a combination of movements from the arm, hand, and fingers. Make sure the hair of the bow is flat on the string, and your bow is near the middle on the string, usually in the lower half. Your fingers and wrist must be loose and flexible. This is really important. You may like to try the exercise with only your first and second fingers and thumb on the string to get that nice loose feeling. And then try it again with your fingers on the string, but still trying to maintain that loose feeling. In the notes written in the book are actually really good. So read through all of those and try all of those suggestions. And the ball bouncing analogy is a really good one to think about when you're learning this bow stroke. Exercise 6D, Sortier at tempo 126. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just a few performance tips for your exam. The first thing is to make sure all of your music is really clean. So please rub out all of your markings and any notes that you've written in. There can't be any translations or anything to do with the form or structure of the pieces. And you can still have your own fingerings in your pieces, but don't write any extra fingerings or anything in the technical work. The next thing is you need to know your musical terms. So 6th grade is very thorough, and they become less forgiving as you go up into the higher grades. So there's a lot of work involved in the history and the musical structure and all of those sorts of things. So you need to know your musical terms, the structure of each piece, the history of the composer, and also the history of the period. In your exam, try to be calm. I know sometimes it can be a very daunting experience, but if you've done say 5th grade, 4th grade, you know what to expect, and you know how much you need to prepare. It only gets harder as you get up into the higher grades. The examiners are always very nice, and they want to see what you can do and not what you can't do. So if you do make a mistake, just try to be calm. If you do make a mistake, try to keep going. But if you find that you can't, just stop and just say, "Can I start again?" And they'll always say yes. Okay, so don't worry if you do make a mistake. The best thing is to try to keep going. So practice that, particularly in your pieces, your scales, everything really. Try to practice what I call performance practice. So if it's a performance practice, you're practicing to perform. Okay, and then if you're practicing and you make a mistake, you can stop and work on that section and then try it again. But always practice performing, which means try not to stop if you make a mistake or just have a little fumble. So then when you get into the exam, you can keep playing even if you do make a mistake. Violin Virtuosos with Rodney and Anthea Wickstrom. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for all strings-related education videos. Visit our website, violinvirtuosos.com.au, and like our Violin Virtuosos Facebook page.